You've probably seen it in movies or read about it in books, right? People just vanishing, all at once, in the blink of an eye. This whole idea, the rapture, it's one of the most powerful images out there about the end of the world. But today, we're going to dig into a really interesting question our source material raises. Where did this idea actually come from? And has this always been the Christian hope for the future?
Right off the bat, our source draws a really sharp line in the sand between two very different concepts. On one side, you have this secret rapture, this idea of a quiet disappearance, a secret escape plan. And on the other, you have what the Bible calls the blessed hope, which is described as a loud, visible, glorious appearing. It's a single event, a massive reunion. So you've got escape versus reunion, secret versus visible, two totally different pictures.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How did these two completely different hopes get blended together into one? Well, to untangle them, we've got to go back, way back in time, and trace this idea to its source. Let's start at the very beginning. Our source first takes a look at what the earliest Christians believed. I mean, what was the hope that got them through poverty, ridicule, and some pretty intense persecution? Well, according to the source, the early church wasn't excited about secretly disappearing to avoid trouble. No, their hope was pinned on something way bigger and way more public, a massive resurrection of the dead, and this grand, visible reunion with Christ for everyone to see. So you see, for them, hope wasn't some kind of ticket out of suffering. It was the anchor that held them steady through it. The promise wasn't escape, it was the ultimate visible return of justice. And that's what gave them the strength to endure, well, pretty much anything. Okay, so if that was the original hope for centuries, where on earth did this idea of a secret escape come from? Well, our source argues that it's a much more recent development than a lot of people realize. Get this. The source claims that for the first 1,800 years, that's 1,800 years of Christian history, the idea of a secret rapture happening before a final period of tribulation, well, it simply wasn't a taught doctrine. For centuries, the belief was really consistent. One single, visible return. But then, in the 1830s, things started to change. A man named John Nelson Darby developed a new theory of a two-stage return. This idea really took off around 1909 when it was included in the super-influential Scofield Reference Bible, and from there, it was basically cemented in pop culture by all those novels and movies. So this really frames the secret rapture, not as some timeless, ancient doctrine, but as a relatively modern theory with a clear, traceable starting point. Okay, so with all that history in mind, our source turns back to the Bible. The idea is to re-examine some of those key verses that are often used to support the secret rapture theory, arguing that their original context changes, well, everything. Let's take that famous phrase, "as a thief in the night." We hear that and we immediately think silent, secret, sneaky, right? But the source points out that the Apostle Peter uses that exact same metaphor and says the day of the Lord will come with a great noise. So the argument is that thief isn't about the event being secret, it's about the timing being a complete surprise. All right, now this next one is fascinating. When we hear one will be taken and the other left, we usually assume that being taken is the good thing, right? That's the goal. But the source tells us to look at the context Jesus provides right after saying that, the story of Noah's flood. Now think about it. In that story, who was taken? The wicked. They were taken away by the floodwaters. And who was left behind? Noah and his family, safe in the ark. This reading completely flips the common understanding. It suggests the focus isn't on escape, but on judgment versus preservation. So why does any of this distinction between a secret escape and a glorious appearing actually matter for us today? What's the big deal? It all seems to boil down to this one really fundamental question. When people face a crisis, is the biblical pattern to pull them out of it or to protect them in it? The source then highlights what it calls a consistent pattern all through the Bible. Noah wasn't teleported away from the flood. He was protected in the ark. The Israelites weren't removed from Egypt before the plagues. They were kept safe in the land of Goshen. Daniel wasn't spared from the lion's den. He was preserved in it. The pattern we see over and over is one of divine presence and preservation through a crisis, not removal from it. And you know, a prayer from Jesus himself seems to really underscore this theme. He specifically asks his Father not for his followers to be taken out of the world, but for them to be protected in it. And so, our source leaves us with this final, really provocative question. What kind of hope is truly more powerful? A hope that promises an escape from the storm, or a hope that promises unshakable strength right in the middle of it? That's a question worth thinking about.